Hi everybody, it's time for another one of my uncovering the truth behind PUBG videos. Now you may well have watched my last one, which I released about a month ago, uncovering the truth about PUBG, the first draft, where I go into looking at the lore and history behind PUBG, looking at various video evidence that's been put out and evidence from around the map. So I'll link to that in the YouTube video description down below. But what dropped recently was the third part of the official Erangel tour guide. So I thought what we'd do is we'd go through and we'll play the guide and we'll kind of discuss what this means for what's actually happened on Erangel. I mean, we've got a pretty good idea that obviously in 1965 there was this big bombardment. All these aircraft came over and killed everybody apart from the administrator who went on to run PUBG as we have it today, and he was the original lone survivor. But what it appears before that, a military force came in and took over Military Island, whether they were new military, and they then really repressed the local population to do their bidding, and you can kind of see that in this video. What's interesting from Survivor Pass, the last Survivor Pass, was the introduction of American GI uniforms, and whether maybe they were something to do with what happened as well, maybe helping the resistance as well. But anyway, let's listen and let's watch and see what secrets we can uncover.
Hello, survivors. How was your stay in Erangel's prison? Today is the last day of our tour, so if you have any remaining questions about the island, be sure to let us know as we move. Yesterday we saw Rozhok, the mansion, the prison, and even the Hall of Fame. Today we're going to start at the famous MYLTA power plant, pass through POCHINKI, check out the old quarry, and wrap up our journey on the island of SOSNOVKA. Pile into the UAZ and let's get moving. MYLTA was one of the first nuclear power plants in this area of the world, and enabled Erangel to sustain its civilian and military populations. Some historians even speculate that the quarry up the road was used to mine some of the materials that went into building MYLTA, giving the people of the island plenty of work to do. We know from evidence found around the island that MYLTA was targeted by the resistance. By the looks of things, they succeeded. The damage wasn't enough to cause any kind of nuclear incident or anything like that, but I'm sure they had a purpose. Another of Erangel's major cities is POCHINKI, and if you haven't picked up on the general theme of the island by now, it's also...
I love the way that he kind of skated over the fact that was a nuclear power station and they attacked it and blew something up, but everything was okay. You know, don't worry. It's a bit small for a nuclear power station, I'd say. It doesn't really look like a nuclear power station, but I guess they've got that tower, haven't they? I mean, one of the things about when we're diving into looking at the history of PUBG and the lore, it's very much a case of I think the lore and the history, well, I know it has been kind of inserted after the fact. You know, I think when Brendan Green was coming up with PUBG, he didn't think about all these things, and then kind of made Erangel to fit. They're trying to fit a story behind what they created, but yeah, it's all good fun.
Also surrounded by farmland. Close to the heart of the island, it's pretty easy to imagine why POCHINKI would be fought over, and fought over it was. In fact, curfew posters and red flags still hang all over the city, which served as a strong hint that it's better to just obey. Not everyone just rolled over on command, though. If you thought POCHINKI was a hot drop in the battlegrounds, just take a look at all the craters, tanks, and general destruction left in the wake of what went down here.
So what's interesting about this is that when you do go around the battlefields on Erangel, like on the beach, on the south coast, and just by prison as well, it does appear that the resistance did have access to heavy weapons, simply because they blew up lots of armoured vehicles as well. But it also appears they had artillery pieces, because if we assume that the military, after the resistance swelled up, say, and took over the main island, and then the military responded by invading from the military SOSNOVKA and coming across, the lines of defence, if you like, that you see, especially like north of prison, where there's trenches and there's artillery pieces pointing towards the military island, would kind of indicate that the resistance had some quite powerful backers to give them this sort of stuff. I mean, there's always the chance, I guess, they stole the equipment from the army and then used it against them. But it may kind of may kind of indicate why there was this massive aerial bombardment at the end in 65 that killed everybody, well, almost everybody, that other people, other forces were at play.
No doubt noticed all of the resistance signage around the island. In fact, I'm sure the military wondered how they were getting so many of them past their inspections. Well, the truth was found here in this hideaway warehouse. They printed them right here on the island. This warehouse was more than just a print house, though. Operations were planned, communications were relayed, and it probably served as an easy-to-get-to hideout for those keeping an eye on Sosnovka. Now, the quarry here was a key commercial venture for the island. Stone from here can be found in architecture all across the land. The stone even matches up with some found in the ruins to the north, meaning this site has been in use long before modern Erangel existed here. Even newer structures like MYLTA power plant have stone and brick that seems to have originated here, which suggests that the military either contracted or, more likely, just forced the workers here to supply the demand. That forced labor could have been a reason for the resistance to target this site for liberation. Nowadays, most of Erangel's visitors make it to the
Yeah, so there we got some evidence there, perhaps, of the fact that the repressive military regime on Erangel did conscript local people to work for them for free. So that gives us another reason for the rebellion, the resistance that came to be.
island by plane and parachute, but back in the day it was more likely you'd take a ferry from the mainland. While most of the island's supplies were offloaded up north in Georgiapol, this is where the majority of the people came and went. That wasn't this little town's only trade, though. Abandoned fishing boats still line the beach here, and this area and Primorsk were likely home to many of the laborers who worked at the quarry. It also appears to have been home to a pretty large battle between the resistance and the military.
Yeah, this is really interesting here. So we've got amphibious vehicles coming out of the sea, so from the south, from the military island, going into Erangel, and definitely coming up against artillery bombardment, aren't they, or mortars or something like that. So it meant that the resistance did have some really heavy-duty weapons to fight back against the army.
As the craters and husks of aquatic vehicles line the beach to the west. Now I know you've all been seeing those dead vehicles laying around and wanting to get inside one, so we've got another treat for you. If you wouldn't mind hopping into our authentic Battlegrounds tour agency, BRDM2, we're gonna ride the waves over to Sosnovka Island. Remember that when you're telling your friends and family about how great of a time you had here. The island of Sosnovka was a key factor in Erangel's painful history. Connected to the island by only its two bridges, Sosnovka is where the military established their base from which they'd carry out their plans and overall occupation of Erangel. Now onto the location everyone's been waiting for. Sosnovka Military Base. You know it as one of the bloodiest places on the battlegrounds, but during the Erangel conflict, it was one of the safest places for the military to be. Heavily fortified with soldiers, artillery, and red propaganda, this base easily helped establish the military's hold on Erangel. That's not to say that the resistance never made their way in here. There's strong evidence that points towards one of the military's own guided missiles as the cause for the destruction over at MYLTA power plant. Infiltrating this base couldn't have been an easy task. What historians find most odd is that not even the military base was spared from the bombardment in '65. Maybe they thought it easier to wipe everything out instead of recovering it or losing it to the black market. Might even been some other reason it got leveled, but we may never know for sure. And that's a wrap. Now you all may not be getting...
So, yeah, that points out the fact that when in 65, when the big aerial bombardment, when the bombs fell, they did the military base as well. Maybe that would point towards a sort of situation whereby the military elements that took over Erangel and subjugated the local workforce to do their bidding, maybe the military elements were some sort of rebellion in and of themselves against the surrounding. We can only, if the history is parallel to our history with the Soviets, the USSR, and this was maybe some breakaway that formed in Erangel, and they had plans to threaten the Russian, the Soviet government in Moscow, and this kind of all came to a head. Maybe the fact that Erangel was some sort of secret location, that where things were going on here that was secret, and that's why the military that took over were able to do so much in terms of oppressing the local population, and they were planning, some sort of takeover, and that led to this bombardment by the main military forces, the main Soviet forces on the mainland to come over, and wipe the slate clean, and that will kind of explain why they blew everything up, because they were trying to kill all of these rebels, not only the resistance of the local populace, but maybe these army elements, these military elements that had gone rogue and were challenging the communists as well. So it does kind of look like, with the posters of that guy, that he did have a bit of a cult of personality, didn't he, with the red eye, that he was in charge. And we do know that the administrator of the battlegrounds, the guy who survived, wasn't that man we see in the posters around Erangel, because he was only a kid in 65 when the bombs came down. So I think we can kind of sum up really what happened in Erangel then now, can't we? We know that Erangel was mainly a farm, agrarian-based culture with a little bit of industry, with a military base on it. And then over time, the military became much more oppressive of the population, forcing them to work, and then their resistance formed, which may well have been helped by outside forces. There was open fighting between the resistance and the military, and the resistance were either given more heavy weapons or stole more heavy weapons off the military there. Probably rose up in open rebellion, which caused the military from SOSNOVKA, from the military island, to then do an amphibious invasion from the island back over to the mainland. And then there were many battles around the island, which led eventually in 65, probably in that sort of time frame, to a massive aerial bombardment from outside forces, we have to assume, that destroyed everybody apart from the lone survivor.
The same type of chicken dinner an actual battleground survivor would get, but we do have a catered chicken dinner waiting for you back at the hotel. And remember, your package includes a discount to any of our other Battlegrounds tours, so be sure to take advantage of that and get on the waiting list today. We hope you enjoy.
So that's really cool. So we're going to see tour guides, hopefully from Miramar, Vikendi and Sanok as well, where we'll hear the history, or maybe we'll be able to work out the history behind those different maps, and then bring everything together as to an overall history of what happened in the lore of PUBG.
Enjoyed your experience with the Battlegrounds Tour Agency, the world's most authentic way to experience the Battlegrounds like never before.
So there it is. The final Erangel tour guide. I've kind of summed up what I think's happened. What do you think's happened with PUBG? What's the lore? What's the history behind this amazing game? And yeah, looking forward to learning more with new tour guides, hopefully coming out over the next few months. That's enough from me. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe. Thank you very much, and I will see you again soon.